Hey everyone, this is the Rewriter writing in. This video is the second part of my Batman Arkham Origins review, The Rewrite. Be sure to check out the first video where I give my thoughts on this game from its story to the gameplay itself. But without further ado, let's dive into the rewritten story of Batman Arkham Origins. Again! A voice shouts out as a man is seen punching a brick wall repeatedly, creating a thunderous thud that echoed through the dojo. His hand was covered in blood and his fingers were beginning to turn a gnarly purple. I can't keep doing this forever, he thought to himself, but didn't dare to say it out loud. Over and over, punch after punch, his strength was starting to fail him as his punches were getting weaker and weaker. The scene flashes over to the dark, empty factory of Ace Chemicals as a delivery van flies into the back. Moments later, another van pulls up next to it, as a couple thugs from the second van fidget out of the driver and passenger sides as the trunk swings open, revealing a stumpy-looking midget with slicked back hair and an exuberant brown fur coat. He utters a slow, creepy welcome to some of the other thugs dressed in suits, wearing all sorts of strange animal masks. The stumpy man snaps his fingers as his cronies begin to unload the van, bringing out multiple suitcases. As they are unloading the suitcases, a couple of police vans pull up. One thug begins shaking and attempts to run away. Another thug grabs him by the collar and pulls him back, saying the police were with them as an added layer of security. The midget croaks out a laugh with his thick British accent as they lay the suitcases on the table, opening them up to reveal multiple different types of firearms. One of the suited thugs signals to a thug with a giant red cone helmet to go inside and retrieve the ingredients for their formula. This red-hooded thug shakes as one of the other suited thugs forcefully grabs him by the arm and brings him along into the factory. As they are walking through a hallway, they hear the sound of something metal bang against the brick wall. The red-hooded goon's heart skips a beat, and the suited henchman paces over to the wall, seeing nothing until he looks down. He picks up what looks like a metal bat, and dread fills his being. Back in the dojo, the man breaks from his stance and holds his right hand with his left one, holding it close to his chest, as his whole body begins to shake. Giving up is failure. Failure is death. Had you not been so weak, perhaps they would still be alive. His blood began to boil as he struck the brick wall with more force than he thought he had. Your weakness, your failure, is why they lie in coffins while you're here, being a disappointment. He knew not to answer back and persevered through the pain. Drops of sweat fell from his face like blood. The harder the punch, the farther bent his fingers got. He wouldn't fail this time. The legacy of his family would continue on through him, and he would prove that he was just as strong as his father. Putting his right foot back, he stopped the onslaught of punches and took a deep breath. He clenches his right hand into a fist, picturing the man who murdered his parents, and with all he could muster, threw his fist into the brick wall. Instead of his fist crashing into the wall and bending backwards, it flew through the brick, with his fist and forearm extending out of the wall. The voice behind him commends Wayne on his ability to overcome when things seem hopeless, but reminds him that there is still much more to come. Wayne thanks Master Kane with a bow, before wrapping his hand in gauze and walking into the shadows. Back in Ace, the brick wall behind the thug crumbles as Batman flies through it, dragging the suited thug into the darkness. The red-hooded thug runs for his life, continually looking behind him to make sure that the creature wasn't there. As he looks back for a third time, he turns forward again to see the bat right in front of him. The thug lets out a scream before stumbling backwards and running in the other direction. As he's running, a batarang flies past him, hitting the railing in front of him, causing him to stop in his tracks. The bat then asks why he's stealing from Ace Chemicals and who is he working for. The thug screams that he doesn't know, he's just trying to make a living for his family. He didn't mean to get caught up in all this. Just as he's talking, two thugs run up from behind and begin opening fire on Batman. Batman quickly dodges the gunfire, but a stray bullet flies into the red-hooded thug's shoulder as he tumbles off the railing. Batman sees this and leaps over to grab him, being able to grab onto his glove. The red-hooded thug thanks him over and over, but as Batman is pulling him up, he tugs on the glove, and the thug slips right out of it, falling into the vat of chemicals. Batman screams with a "No!" before flying over to the thugs and brutally beating them down. The other thugs making the arms deal hear the gunfire and attempt to finish loading the weapons as quickly as possible. However, the light post above them flashes between darkness and light as they look up to see one of the thugs hanging upside down from the top of it. Batman then drops down in the middle of the group in a whirl of smoke. The thugs freak out and begin pulling out the weapons, hopelessly spraying bullets in an attempt to kill the monster. Batman starts taking out the armed thugs as well as the officers one by one. The stumpy man closes the trunk and uses this opportunity to clear the area, leaving his goons behind. Once Batman knocks out each of the armed thugs, he throws a batarang into the last thug's leg, causing it to spew blood as he screams on the ground. Batman then uses the smoke as intimidation as he slowly walks through it into the crying thug who is desperately crawling away. Batman grabs him by the leg, dragging him over and putting his hand on the batarang. He then demands the thug tell him who he's working for, who that man was. The thug screams for Batman to go to hell, to which Batman replies that that was the wrong answer. He grabs the batarang, digging it in deeper, telling him that he won't ask again. The thug screeches, exclaiming that they'll kill him for giving up the boss. Batman then answers that he won't hesitate to kill him if he doesn't answer his question, and that he'll make it as slow as possible. The thug swears, crying that he works for the Penguin, the stumpy man that was here. Batman then demands to know where he works out of, with the thug stuttering that he operates out of an abandoned cruise ship called the Final Offer on Gotham Harbor. Batman thanks him for the information before socking him in the face, knocking out a couple of teeth. Batman then grapples to the roof and drops down the back into the Batmobile before speeding down the highway towards the harbor. Bruce then contacts Alfred, informing him that he is heading towards the Gotham Harbor in search of an arms dealer, who might have a lead on finding out who the crime lord Black Mask really is. Alfred, holding a tray of dinner in his hand, informs Bruce that his Christmas Eve dinner is ready and that Batman can take the night off for once. Bruce agitatedly tells Alfred that he's not having this conversation again, that this city needs him, and if it weren't for him, there would be more guns out on the streets. Alfred replies that there are other ways to make the city safer, without having to knock out people's teeth. Bruce ignores him, telling Alfred that he will make contact with him again if he has any new leads. While Batman is in pursuit of Penguin, a van pulls into Ace, with two thugs that hop out, ripping the batarang out of the man's leg before throwing it onto the ground, and loading him into the van. They pull away from Ace and head to an old cemetery, going behind a massive tombstone, with an entrance that leads down below to a crypt. Inside this crypt is a long table, with several people in animal masks sitting around it, and Black Mask standing in front of a fireplace, with his back towards the thug. The thug begins to shake as Black Mask asks him what happened that night. The thug stutters, saying that it was a simple arms deal and formula grab before that bat creature showed up and took everyone down. Black Mask simply answers back that it looks like he took some damage after the scuffle. The thug replies that he was tortured by the bat and had to give up Penguin in the final offer. Black Mask answers back sarcastically that this thug sure knows how much he loves failure. He then remarks that you can't trust a comedian to do a henchman's job. Black Mask then signals for two of his mask-wearing henchmen to grab the thug behind him and put him on a chair, strapping his arms and legs down. Black Mask then walks over to a table full of masks and begins to put some sort of liquid inside one of them. The thug begins to squirm as Black Mask approaches him with the mask, saying that he must kill this old version of himself, this pathetic failure, and must be reborn as a servant of the society. The thug attempts to flail his arms and legs, desperately attempting to break out of his bondage. Black Mask walks over to him, slowly lowering the mask onto his face as the thug screams in agony. He remarks that this sound is the sound of rebirth into a better creature. After the thug screams for a minute, he passes out, lying limp in the chair. Black Mask then casually changes the subject back to the Bat, pacing back and forth around the fireplace. He explains that Batman has done some harm to his plans in the fact that he doesn't have enough ingredients to make more of his liberating face paint. However, this Batman may be useful after all, as he is already wearing a mask, proclaiming our same moniker that society lives under a false mask. One of the members of the society chimes in, saying that it seems very unlikely that the Batman would help him, seeing as how he fights criminals. Black Mask stops and turns around, answering that anyone can be bought for a price. It's all about appealing to the innermost part of being human, having power and status, and this is something that we can offer him. And we are not criminals, but purveyors of truth, wiping away the falsehood that high society casts upon the lower class, or those they deem lower class. He will help the society destroy their enemy, Bruce Wayne. He then orders them to retrieve Batman and bring him to the meeting location. Black Mask then pulls out a pistol and shoots the member in the knee, causing him to collapse to the ground. Black Mask explains that this was for defying him, and the next one would go in his head. The Batmobile speeds through the snow-blanketed streets of Gotham as the glow of the headlights reflects on the dark buildings and into the night sky. Puffs of snow are being kicked up as the beefy vehicle tears through the alleys as it begins to approach the Gotham harbor. Batman then pops out of the Batmobile, investigating the harbor for signs of the final offer. After looking around, he sees a decrepit ship, with rust and many gashes along the sides, along with the van from earlier being parked on the deck. However, this ship isn't empty, as Batman could see the red glow of a sniper rifle paint the ground around him. He used the shadow to conceal himself, and when he got below the sniper tower, he used the grapple hook to zip up right behind him and grabbed the thug by the neck, choking him out. But there was another sniper, who noticed the red glow disappear from the other side of the ship. The thug radios in, asking Mike if he's good. The thug puts the radio closer to him, asking Mike if he's okay, before he sees a bat shadow behind him, throwing him onto the ground and kicking him in the face. Once Batman dispatched the snipers, he opened the rusted double doors as he entered the frigid, yet nicely furnished interior of the final offer. Batman looked around to see that this Penguin set up the main hall of the ship as a nightclub/lounge, with loud music pumping and strobe lights flashing. However, no one was in this club. As Batman ventured deeper into the ship, he saw a locker room filled with guns and explosives. It was enough to fund a small army, and Batman started to wonder where he was getting the money and resources to be able to obtain all these. As Batman was investigating the weapons, he could hear over the loudspeaker Penguin's thick British voice, explaining that this was everyone's final chance to get over to the boiler room and put in their bets before the fight. Batman dropped the gun back into the cache and made his way into the boiler room. Shouting thugs could be heard from all the way down the hallway as Batman was sneaking through a ventilation shaft that led above the boiler room. Once he was above the room, hanging above on top of a beam, he saw the makeshift fighting pit, with at least 100 thugs around, waving their fists in the air and throwing money around. And just as things were getting hectic, an Australian woman in a white dress silenced and addressed the crowd, saying that the main event was just about to start and it was going to be a doozy this time. Before she could say who was going to be fighting, a thug handed her a paper with writing on it. She then announced that their champion, Bronze Tiger, would be going up against the fearsome Batman. Just then, a spotlight shot up to reveal Batman above them. Many of the thugs out of the crowd pulled out their weapons and trained them on Batman. Penguin then laughs through the loudspeaker, saying that Batman wasn't actually as clever as he thought, as Penguin knew that Batman was there when he took out his snipers and tripped his silent alarm coming onto the boat. Penguin continued by saying that if Batman didn't participate in this fight, he would kill this hostage. Penguin opens the window to his office and dangles a woman in a black dress out of it. If he participated in this fight, Penguin would tell him what he wanted to know. Damn, Bruce thought as he dropped into the fighting pit. Bronze Tiger wasted no time and lunged at Batman. Batman dodged out of the way, but not before having a portion of his cape torn. Tiger began to furiously throw punches at Batman, all of which were blocked, until he did a front flip which kicked Batman in the jaw, causing him to fall to the ground. "Looks like the fight's going to be over real quick," the woman in white shouts as Tiger grabs Batman, pulling him up. Batman then moves forward, grabbing him by the hood, and headbutts him, causing Tiger's mask to break and his nose to start bleeding. The two start going at each other faster, with each blocking blow after blow while putting in counters of their own. Tiger's blades were making quick work of Batman's suit as it was starting to rip and tear. Batman knew that he needed to finish this fight quickly, as if this continued too long, his suit's armor layer would be non-existent. Batman waited for the opportunity when Tiger went for a flip kick, grabbing his leg out of the air and throwing him onto the ground. He was expecting the quick counter from Tiger and grabbed his wrist, guiding Tiger's right claw into his own left shoulder. Tiger kicked Batman in the chest, sending him a few steps backward. When Tiger lunged at Batman, he used a batarang to deflect his claw and stuck it in Tiger's chest, dropping him to the ground. The crowd went silent, but soon erupted with cheers of "Batman" as money was flying into the ring. Batman grappled up to Penguin's deck as he motions for Batman to come inside. The woman in the black dress is sitting down next to Penguin, her eyes darting back and forth as beads of sweat drip from off her head. Penguin is casually holding a gun to her head as he asks what Batman wants to know. He tells Penguin to put the gun down and let her go, and then they'll talk. Penguin laughs and shakes his head, telling him that was never part of the deal. Batman makes his hand into a fist and slowly starts to walk over to him. Penguin goads him, telling him to take one more step and her brains will be all over the walls. Batman stops, demanding that Penguin tell him who Black Mask is and where his base of operations is. Penguin lowers the gun, telling Batman that he doesn't know who Black Mask is, and that if he did, why would he tell him? Batman then replies that he could make him talk, but how much pain he wants to endure before that is up to him. Penguin laughs at Batman, spitting that he's out of his mind. He's just a freak in a costume trying to stop the biggest crime lord in Gotham. Ha, feels good not to be the freak this time. Batman then pulls out a batarang, threatening that this will be the last time he'll ask who Black Mask is, and the next time, Penguin will be breathing out of a tube. Penguin replies back, sarcastically saying that he was starting to get scared, but that help was on the way. Batman cocks his hand to throw a batarang when the woman in the black dress pulls out a gun and shoots Batman in the chest. The door behind him breaks open as a giant Black Mask henchman paces over to Batman, who is now lying on the ground, and punches him in the face with a meaty fist as Batman blacks out. Back in Ace Chemicals, the police are all over the scene, with tape lining the railing. Lieutenant Gordon arrives, being accompanied by his partner, Harvey Bullock, and they begin examining the scene. Bullock mentions to Gordon that there was a possible sighting of the Bat. Gordon nods, telling Bullock, no kidding, as he reaches down to pick up a batarang that had been stuck into the railing. Gordon touches the tip of the batarang, feeling the incredible sharpness that it had, along with the surprisingly light weight of it. One officer with a black eye and a bloody nose tells Gordon that they were trying to stop this arms deal when he was taken down. Another officer hands Gordon another batarang, this one covered in blood, and fills in Gordon and Bullock on what they knew of the situation. Gordon lights a cigar as the officer begins by saying that this was an arms deal, as there are many firearms scattered across the ground. Additionally, there are all sorts of strange animal masks that these thugs were wearing, possibly a new gang in Gotham, as there are no records of these types of masks found in any other crime scene. The Bat was also here, as there are a couple of his throwing weapons scattered around the scene. However, there appears to be more to this deal, as there are unconscious criminals inside the facility as well. The investigative team also found this dangling from one of the railings. The officer pulls a Red Hood dome and a cape out of a bag. Bullock remarks that the Bat's not alone in being a costumed freak. Gordon walks over to a table that has multiple weapons displayed on it for fingerprint and data analysis. Gordon mentions that these weapons are military grade, as the material and weapon composition are meticulously detailed and thought out. These weren't just made by gun peddlers using spare nuts and bolts and magazines. Whoever is funding this arms deal, they're connected, and willing to pay serious cash to build an army. Gordon then walks over to the masks that are in the bags, pulling one out. This was no flimsy paper mask. This was high-quality porcelain with intricate details and etchings, not cheap. Gordon puffs out smoke before saying that he has a hunch of who might be funding this, but still needs to confirm it. Gordon then tells the officer to pack everything they can and bring it back to the precinct. Gordon and Bullock get back into the car and drive back to the precinct. Batman wakes up in a dimly lit room with only candles casting low light. He looks down to see that his hands are chained down to a metal ring, as well as his utility belt missing. The smell of dirt and blood permeates the air as a door opens up above him. Multiple figures file in with the same strange-looking masks as he had seen before. In the middle of them stands Black Mask, who welcomes Batman to his humble abode, before telling all the members to have a seat, including Batman. He goes on to say that he has taken notice of the Bat's, let's say, expertise in dealing with those who stand against him. He assumes that Batman wants what everyone wants, a purpose. By joining forces, Batman can have a focused goal, to dethrone the rich and powerful from their status, and exposing their true faces. Black Mask continues by saying that Batman should help them eliminate Gotham's worst problem, Bruce Wayne. The rich brat of the deceased Thomas and Martha Wayne that inherited everything, not having to work a day in his life. He took what was Black Mask's and will pay for his wrongdoings. This will make Gotham a safer place, a goal that they both share. And as a bonus, Batman already wears a mask, showing that the facade that Gotham wears will be torn down, revealing its true nature, a nature already found within Batman himself. Batman, with strained breathing from his gunshot wound, answers that he would never work for a criminal. He's going to save this city from monsters like Black Mask, who manipulate Gotham. He laughs, saying that he is only controlling facets of Gotham that need control and stability. Without strong leadership, Gotham would crumble under the weight of its own aspirations. Those society deems undesirable are cast aside. Help us help Gotham, Batman. He'll cast out those wearing their facades and put in place those who have been reborn through the fires of hatred. Join the false face society, Batman, and you will help Gotham more than you can ever know. Batman closes his eyes, seeing a flashback of himself back in the dojo of the League of Assassins. In that day's training session, he is learning how to escape out of bondage. Master Kane orders other ninjas to chain him up, showing Bruce how to free himself in a similar situation. Once tied up, Master Kane explains to Bruce how to sell the illusion of true bondage by flailing his body around. This gives his captors solace as they truly believe that they're safe. However, out of his mouth pops out a tiny key, one which he uses to subtly free himself from his chains one by one. This false sense of security will be their undoing, as Master Kane breaks from his chains, putting one of the ninjas in a headlock before flipping him onto the ground. Batman opens his eyes and coughs, while Black Mask is still going on in the background. Out pops a small key covered in blood that Batman uses quickly and subtly to open his locks, while miming motions of breakout attempts. All eyes are on Black Mask as he is pacing around the room, giving a big speech, while not even looking at Batman half the time. After he finishes his speech, he asks one more time if Batman will join him. Batman replies by saying over his dead body. Black Mask replies by saying, "Fair enough," as he sends one of the masked individuals to execute Batman with a pistol. The henchman stands up, having Batman's utility belt slung across his shoulder, and makes his way over. Batman puts the loose chains around him to seem that he is still imprisoned, and when the henchman walks over to put the pistol in Batman's face, he lunges with incredible speed for being injured, punching the henchman in the mask, causing it to break in half, revealing the horribly disfigured face that was underneath the mask. Batman then pulls an emergency smoke pellet from out of his boot and spikes it into the ground as gunfire rings out again. In the confusion, Batman picks up the mask and his bell, pressing a button on his cowl that used an experimental military tracking system that let Alfred know where Bruce was, so that he could be picked up by him. At this point, Batman's strength was starting to fade, as he was mindlessly punching thugs out of his way, with no signs of Black Mask. Batman then sees stairs leading up to the open air, and when he stumbles upon them, he sees that he's in a cemetery, as a black hearse pulls over to him and he drops into the back, passing out. Back at the GCPD precinct, Gordon walks into Commissioner Loeb's office, while Bullock veers off to the side to get started on the box of donuts on his desk. Commissioner Loeb is on the phone with someone when Gordon walks in, and he puts his hand up for a moment before saying that he'll talk later. Loeb asks Gordon what the situation at Ace Chemicals looked like. Gordon goes on to say that there was an arms deal, but this was to cover for the fact that they were stealing chemicals, possibly for a formula. And then there's the masks. They're porcelain, high-quality imports from Japan. Only someone with money would equip their gang with military-grade weapons and costly masks. The only gang that would be able to afford this would be Carmine Falcone's, but he was taken out by the Bat last year, and that's not his MO. This left a power vacuum and is seemingly being filled by their opposition. Gordon finishes by saying that he believes that this is the work of a shadowy individual known on the streets as Black Mask, a new player in Gotham that emerged after Falcone's fall from power. He's planning something with these chemicals, and we have to stop him before he becomes too powerful. We don't want another Falcone on our hands. Loeb stops him, saying that he doesn't need to concern himself with this Black Mask, and that he'll assign SWAT officer Lieutenant Brandon to work on that lead. What Loeb is more interested in is this Batman, and wants Gordon on the case to stop him. Gordon pauses, asking why he would be reassigned, as this was his case to work on. Loeb tells him to stop arguing, as apprehending Batman is more important than other criminals trying to make it to the top. Gordon then tells Loeb that Batman will be stopped, but Black Mask is infinitely a bigger threat, as there are no indications that the Batman has done any criminal activity aside from being a vigilante. And by stopping Falcone, he was able to make Gotham a safer place, even if it were for a brief moment of time. Loeb tells Gordon that he has had enough, and that he is assigned to the Batman case until further notice. Gordon shakes his head, putting his cigar out in Loeb's ashtray before closing the door to the commissioner's office. Back at the cemetery in the False Face Society headquarters, Black Mask is seen torturing the henchman who allowed Batman to escape. Sionis asks why he didn't put the restraints on properly, while the thug screams that he did make sure it was secure and that Batman must have had a lockpick somewhere. Sionis then asks why he didn't think to check him when he was unconscious and tied up. The thug begins to cry, saying that they did search him, but found no weapons or devices except for what was on his belt. Sionis then nods his head, telling the thug to relax and that everything was okay. Sionis puts his hand on the thug's shoulder, but then instantly uses a hammer to smash the thug's hand. He shrieks in pain, and Black Mask wipes some of the blood from his white suit before telling his torturer to continue the process. Black Mask then exits the room as the thug begins to scream. Sionis tells another thug to bring him a telephone. He has an important call to make. 3 days later, Bruce awakes and attempts to spring out of bed, but is stopped by his own body, as he is clutching at his chest that's all wrapped up, as well as his forehead. "Thank goodness you're finally awake," Alfred remarks as he's carrying a tray of eggs and a green shake for Bruce. Alfred sets them on the bed as Bruce sits up. Bruce explains the events of that night, describing how Black Mask and his False Face Society set up an arms deal behind Ace Chemicals, but only as a distraction for Batman so that they could steal whatever chemical it was. Alfred remarks that the society's name is charming, though he doesn't feel that strategy worked too well for them. Bruce goes on to say that someone lost their life out there because of all the gunfire, and Black Mask even has police on his payroll. He figured this would end after he put Falcone behind bars, but clearly it didn't. The arms dealer for Black Mask is a man named Penguin, who uses an abandoned ship called the Final Offer as a locker for his weapons, as well as an illegal fighting ring. Bruce explains that he got caught off guard and captured by Black Mask, who tried to induct him into the False Face Society, a gang made up of delusioned Gothamites who want to tear down the elite. And guess who their main target is? Alfred strokes his mustache, telling Bruce that he is in way over his head with all this. Bruce argues with Alfred, telling him that he's the only force stopping Gotham from being torn apart by Black Mask. Alfred then snaps back, telling him that this is a job for the police, not for some young man with a trust fund and too much anger. Bruce fires back, explaining that the police are on Black Mask's payroll. No one can stop him and his connections, except for Batman. Alfred shakes his head, telling Bruce that he drove him home half dead a few nights ago. He goes on to say that his father trusted Alfred to look after Bruce, and he can't in good conscience allow him to keep doing this. The legacy of the Waynes isn't one of violence, but of saving Gotham in a peaceful way. Bruce replies that there can be no peace as long as a crime lord and his cult of lunatics are on the streets, with the police in his back pocket. There is no other way. Batman has to stop this before it gets out of hand. Alfred sighs, telling Bruce that he doesn't believe in this path for him, but knows that there is no shaking him, and offers him advice. Alfred tells him that there is no way that he can do this on his own, but there might be someone else who can help him. Lieutenant Gordon of the GCPD is unlike his other colleagues, and actually seeks to make Gotham safer, as opposed to following orders of a crime lord. In his file, it states that he is determined to a fault, strong-willed, and will not take orders in a cause he doesn't believe in. When the GCPD was under Falcone's payroll, he insubordinately continued to track down him, even when he was given orders to let the Falcones go about with their dealings. He was helpful in tracking down Falcone's operations for Batman when he was facing him. Even though he doesn't trust Batman, he is on Gotham's side, not Black Mask's. Commissioner Loeb has taken bribes for years, but has never been caught due to unsubstantial proof. Now might be a good time to ally with Gordon, perhaps taking down both Black Mask and the corrupt officers. Bruce thanks Alfred, telling him that he wouldn't be able to do any of this without him. Alfred replies that he wished he wouldn't anyway, but that he is welcome. Bruce then asks Alfred what he did with the mask that Bruce brought home the other night. Alfred replies that he put it at the back computer and waited to see what he wanted to do with it. Bruce then tells Alfred that there is a residue on the inside of the mask that seemed to cause some sort of disfiguration on the man's face. He tells Alfred to have the scanner on the back computer break down the chemical compound to see what it was made out of. Alfred then leaves Bruce, taking the mask to the back computer while Bruce started to wolf down on the food that Alfred brought to him. After half an hour goes by, Bruce slowly makes his way to the back computer, where Alfred tells him that he has some startling news. The compound found in this mask is a mix of lead, BHT, and hydrofluoric acid, a deadly combo that will either kill or permanently scar. Bruce quickly answers that this is the same formula as the disastrous face paint makeup that Roman Sionis tried to market at Janus Cosmetics, which is why Bruce bought out the company. Things were starting to add up now. The arms deal at Ace Chemicals was to cover for the fact that they were attempting to steal more of these chemicals and to start mass producing them. The masks were designed to permanently scar the wearer, which is why Black Mask kept mentioning a rebirth. And Roman, though not having his own company anymore, still has his family's inheritance, as well as the money given to him in the buyout. And finally, their target is Bruce Wayne, because he took Roman's company from him, and he wants revenge. Alfred sits back in his chair, with dread and worry being spread across his face. Alfred pleads with Bruce to get out of Gotham and go into hiding just for a little while until this all passes over. Bruce answers by reminding Alfred what he said previously to Bruce about the legacy of the Waynes. Their legacy is being kept by attempting to make Gotham a safer place, and Batman is the symbol of fear for the criminals. With fear in their hearts, they'll think twice about hurting innocents on the streets and messing with my city. Alfred replies by saying very well then, and points Bruce over to his suit, saying that in case of him getting back out there, he took the liberty of patching his suit up, bringing the Batmobile back to the cave as well. Bruce takes a look at the suit in the display case and opens it up, donning the cape and cowl again. Batman walks over to the back computer, asking Alfred which cemetery he picked him up at. Alfred replies that it was the Gotham Cemetery, which adds up even more, seeing that Sionis' family is also buried there. Batman thanks Alfred for his help, and tells him that he's heading back there to put an end to Sionis' madness. Alfred cautions him to watch himself, as they won't just let him back in there kindly. Alfred then hands Batman something, telling him that it's finally ready to be tested out. Batman nods his head, sticking it into his utility belt, and walks over to the Batmobile, hopping in and punching it down the road that leads to Gotham Cemetery. As the Batmobile is flying through Gotham, flashes of red and blue permeate the streets as police vehicles begin to chase Batman through the city. Jim Gordon's voice rang through a loudspeaker in his vehicle that Batman needs to pull over before anyone else gets hurt. Batman then flips a switch on his dashboard that ignites a nitrous boost that flings him across the streets with unbelievable speed. The police vehicles struggle to keep up with it, and the Batmobile is not only incredibly quick, but also nimble, able to make sharp turns on a dime. Gordon radios into the other vehicles to cut off Batman's car at one of the nearby street corners. The police vehicles begin to perform this maneuver while the Batmobile is still blazing through the crowded city streets. At one point, Batman thinks that he has lost the police cars and begins to head back to Gotham Cemetery, but is cut off by 3 police cars that slide in behind him and in front of him. Gordon's vehicle pulls up in front of the Batmobile, and he gets out, letting Batman know that he is under arrest for the crime of vigilantism. Batman gets out of the Batmobile, attempting to explain to Gordon that there is a larger threat out there. Gordon isn't hearing it, and pulls out cuffs to attempt to put on Batman. However, as he is walking over to Batman, Gordon hears a call going out through dispatch that the 2 targets are in sight together, and then hears Loeb's gravelly voice saying to eliminate both of them. Gordon turns around, and in an instant, the line of policemen begin to open fire on Gordon and Batman. Batman drops a smoke pellet and grabs Jim, who gets tagged in the stomach by one of the bullets, and Batman vaults over the Batmobile as it begins to take serious damage from all the gunshots. Batman then pulls out his grapple gun to get him and Gordon to the top of a building, but it malfunctions, breaking into a mess of wires. But having no time for anger, Batman throws Gordon over his shoulder and begins to run up the stairs of one of the apartment buildings nearby. The line of police begin to follow them, with Batman taking Gordon to a somewhat safe place, opening his jacket to see that Gordon was wearing a bulletproof vest. Gordon's confusion turns to anger as he asks why Loeb ordered a hit on him. Batman informs Gordon that Loeb and the men that are with Gordon now are on Black Mask's payroll. It seems their goal for tonight was taking out 2 birds with 1 stone. Get rid of the police officer that is coming too close to undermining the GCPD and Black Mask's relationship, along with the vigilante that is thwarting Black Mask's plans. This incident would allow them to frame Gordon's murder on Batman, as there were no other witnesses but them. Also, Black Mask is Roman Sionis, and he's planning on destroying Gotham's elite. The doors on the level that Batman and Gordon are on are being banged on as police forces are scavenging for them. Batman then gives Jim a radio and tells him that he'll be needing him soon. He then tells Gordon to get out of here into a safe place, not back to the GCPD, and to wait for his call, as Batman would distract them. Gordon nods and runs out of the back door while Batman busts through the front door, knocking down a couple of the police officers that were searching for him. Batman then heads to the roof, and when he gets there, he is greeted by a familiar face. "So, you're the Bat that's been terrorizing Gotham for the past year now," David Kane remarks with a slight grin across his face. Batman remarks that Kane is a member of the League of Assassins, and asks why he would stoop so low as to work for mob boss street trash like Black Mask. Kane chuckles, telling Batman that he has his reasons. One being that he heard that the Bat was in Gotham, and wanted to see what he was made of. Batman slides a batarang into his hand and throws it with accuracy and speed, but it is shot out of the air by Kane using his magnum. Kane points his magnum at Batman, opening fire on him as Batman is quickly dodging and rolling out of the way of the gunshots. Kane then puts his pistol away and pulls out his katana from the sheath on his back. Batman pulls out 2 batarangs and the 2 begin to duel with their melee weapons. Kane fights like a veteran ninja, throwing out less attacks, but the ones that are dealt are lethal killing blows. Batman, on the other hand, fights with more speed and aggression, using a flurry of attacks intended to throw Kane off his balance, enabling him to disarm him and take him down. However, Kane had seen all types of fighting styles throughout his life and wasn't fazed by this level of aggression. He began to adapt to Batman's fighting style, using a few more attacks and fighting with a bit more speed. Batman's flurry of attacks were soon being countered too many times, opening up weaknesses in his combat style. The fight between them almost looked like it was practiced and rehearsed because of how much finesse and expertise was on display. Most punches and kicks were being blocked and offered a counterattack, which was then parried into another attack. Both Batman and Kane were only able to get a few hits on each other as they were both incredibly skilled. However, Batman had a new trick up his sleeve that Kane didn't: explosive gel. When Kane took a step back to wind up a roundhouse kick, Batman pulled out the explosive gel behind his back. As Kane flew into his kick, Batman rolled under it, placing some of the gel on the ground beneath him, and when Kane lands, he ignites it, causing Kane to fall down through the building. Batman used this time to look off the roof to see that the police had circled his car, but Batman, with no hesitation, jumps off the building, glides down to the Batmobile before any of the police can realize it, and punches it back to the cave. Once Batman gets back to the cave, Alfred greets him, saying that he expected him to be out a lot later than this. Bruce informs him that Black Mask has the route to the cemetery covered, with police around the streets, as well as David Kane hunting him down. Alfred steps back in shock, saying that he hasn't heard that name in years now, and asks if Bruce was able to do okay. Bruce replies that he made it out in one piece, which is good enough for him at this point. Alfred then asks Bruce if he was able to communicate with Jim Gordon. Bruce explains that the officers on Black Mask's payroll were ordered to take out both Batman and Gordon in an attempt to frame Batman for Gordon's murder. Batman was able to get Gordon out safely, but he was still injured. Alfred then asks Bruce what he plans to do now, as Batman can't get back in there to stop Black Mask. Bruce replies that Batman may not be able to reach Black Mask, but Bruce Wayne can reach Roman Sionis. Bruce then lays out his plan to Alfred, explaining that he will throw a gala event tomorrow evening, inviting Sionis with his acquaintances and Loeb, along with the rest of the GCPD, to celebrate 1 year without Falcone running the streets. The cover is that the Sionis family used to be donors to the GCPD before they were killed by Roman. Bruce has the advantage over Sionis, as Bruce knows he's Black Mask, but Sionis doesn't know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He goes on to explain that he will inform Gordon to be there so that he can stop Loeb and help bring down Black Mask. Bruce then walks over to his radio and calls Jim Gordon. Batman asks Gordon if he can hear this signal. After a few seconds of silence, Jim answers that he can hear him. Batman asks if he's in a safe location, to which Gordon replies that he is, but that he won't let anything happen to his family, as he is not abandoning them. Batman replies that he is not abandoning them, but keeping them safe, as his home is the first place they would check to see if he's there. He continues to say that he needs his help one last time to finally stop Black Mask. Gordon answers that this would be the last time, and is only doing this as a favor because he saved his life. But also, he is doing this for Gotham, not Batman. Batman then goes on to say that Bruce Wayne is holding an event tomorrow evening at his home, and is inviting Roman Sionis and Commissioner Loeb, along with the rest of the GCPD, in order to celebrate 1 year free from Falcone's grip, all thanks to the men and women in blue. His life is at risk, so Batman asks Gordon if he can secretly gather a few officers that he can fully trust in, and come to Wayne Manor. Gordon answers that he can do that, and that he's ready to take down both Sionis and Loeb. Batman then thanks Jim, telling him that he is saving lives by helping him. Gordon confirms again that this isn't for Batman, but Gotham. When Batman ends the radio call, he begins to plan for this new gala event. Back at the cemetery, David Kane walks down the steps, grabbing his shoulder, as Roman Sionis is seen holding his mask in his hands. He looks over to Kane, who has an angry expression on his face. Sionis then asks Kane how badly he messed this one up. Kane puts his hand on his magnum, telling Sionis that all that stands between Sionis' face and a bullet is a wad of cash, and that's a pretty thin barrier. Sionis tells Kane that he had one job: rid him of Batman and be on his merry way. He figured this wouldn't be too hard for the renowned David Kane, but clearly it was. Kane's hands become fists as he says he'll get the job done. Batman weaseled his way out this time, but it wasn't happening again. Sionis tells Kane to forget about Batman, as he has a new assignment for him. A gift, actually. He explains that he just got an invite from Bruce Wayne himself to Wayne Manor for a GCPD celebration. Sionis laughs, calling Wayne a stupid fool, and continues to say that Bruce is Kane's new target. Kane chuckles and smirks. Sionis asks him why he did that. Is he not going to be able to kill a rich playboy? Kane ignores his insult, saying that he trained Bruce years ago, and wants to know if he's still got some spine left in him. Sionis says that he will give them an easy opportunity to flood the manor with Sionis' officers. Wayne fell right into their trap, and he's not getting out of this event alive. The next night, Wayne Manor is bustling with Gotham's police as cars are pulling up to the front door and being valeted over to the massive parking lot on the side of the manor. The building itself is lit up with bright, inviting lights as there are beams of lights being shot into the air to bring attention to the occasion. Servants are everywhere, handing out cocktails and appetizers. In the ballroom, a massive glass chandelier hangs over top, as the marble flooring brilliantly reflects the glow of the lights from off them. An orchestra is even present, with classy jazz music playing to set the tone. A limousine pulls up to the front, with Sionis, Kane, and others filing out of it, and Loeb and a few of his men filing out of another limousine. Once all of the guests arrive at the party, Bruce takes a glass and taps it with a fork, thanking all of them for being here this evening. He thanks all of the GCPD for its bravery in this last year, as well as one of their many generous donors, Roman Sionis, and hopes that everyone has an incredible night. The orchestra kicks back up again, and everyone begins to socialize. Roman walks up to Bruce, thanking him for inviting him to his beautiful manor, even after the two of them had a bit of a hiccup some months ago. Bruce pats him on the shoulder, telling him that it's all water under the bridge. Roman then asks Bruce if he could take him on a little tour of sorts to the rest of his house. Bruce obliges and takes him around the house. Now while they're talking, Loeb motions for some of his undercover officers to start loading the weapons into the back of Wayne Manor, while also taking out some of the gasoline cans. Other men and women in suits and dresses begin to subtly go to the back and put on their masks, grabbing the guns. Some of the police officers begin to discreetly pour the gas around the house and start lighting the manor on fire. Bruce and Roman continue walking, and Roman asks Bruce how everything has been lately. Bruce replies that things have been busy now that he is running a couple of companies. Roman then stops, telling him that Bruce is pretending to run Roman's company, Janus Cosmetics, but that this is his inheritance, not Bruce's. Bruce stops, asking Roman what the meaning of all this is. Roman pulls out a gun from his vest, telling Bruce that he has had things taken from him his whole life, and now he was going to start taking for himself. And the first thing he would do would be to take back his company from a fraud, a young man with a silver spoon in his mouth, unfit to put in the hard work to get to the top, only being there because he is the son of privilege. Well, this is what privilege would get him. Roman raises the gun to Bruce's head, but is quickly disarmed and thrown into the wall. Roman gets back up and charges furiously at Bruce, yelling that this all should belong to him. Bruce ducks one of Roman's punches, gets caught by another one, but then kicks Roman in the chest, sending him sliding to the ground. Roman is lying down next to the gun and reaches over to grab it, but his hand is stepped on by Alfred as he holds a shotgun to his face, before knocking him out with it. But before they have long to celebrate, David Kane grabs Alfred and punches him square in the face, briefly knocking him out. Back in the main hall, Loeb goes up the stairs to make a toast, saying that he is proud of all that the GCPD has accomplished this past year, but that their work wasn't over. They had a job to do tonight if they wanted to be back home safely with their families. Suddenly, Jim Gordon stands in front of the crowd, telling them that they were cowards for letting a criminal control them. It's their job to stop crime, not join it. They should all be ashamed for what they have done, but it's not too late to stop all this madness. Gordon then walks over to a smaller group of officers, including Harvey Bullock, Renee Montoya, and other officers who refuse to give in to Black Mask and Commissioner Loeb. Gordon then pulls out a shotgun from off his back, telling the officers that this was their last chance. Fight with them, or fight for a crime lord. A few officers begin to walk over to Gordon and his team, and Loeb tells Gordon that he has no idea who he's messing with, and that Sionis has kept them protected, as well as funded, so they can be out saving more lives. Without him, the GCPD would be drowning under the gang wars that plague Gotham. However, if you are not going to accept that Sionis has done everything for this department, then you'll all need to be eliminated. With that, multiple officers take out their weapons, as well as Gordon and his team, and they begin to open fire, while there is actual fire starting to kindle and burn the manor down. After firing a few shots and knocking some officers down, in cover, Bullock asks Gordon why they are using rubber bullets, as the other officers are using live rounds. Gordon yells through the gunfire that they aren't going to kill their brothers and sisters of the badge, even if they've chosen the wrong side. Back with Bruce and David Kane, Kane mocks Bruce, telling him that he wasted all of his time that he spent training, as he has simply gone back to the way things were before he left Gotham. Bruce explains that David taught him the necessary skills on how to protect himself and those he loves, but that he would never kill for Ra's al Ghul. Kane answers back that Bruce never had the spine to do that which was necessary, and that Kane and others like him are purging the world of filth and crime, establishing a new world order. Bruce calls Kane a madman, telling him that he worships a lunatic. Kane then pulls out a knife and charges at Bruce, who has his League of Assassins gauntlets under his suit, which he uses to ward off Kane's knife. Kane slides the knife under Bruce, slicing his leg, but this doesn't stop Bruce from fighting. Flames start to swirl around him as Black Mask's thugs started to torch the place. Bruce kicks the knife out of Kane's hand and uses his gauntlet to cut Kane across the face. Blood pours from off his face, and his anger makes him fight even more furiously. Now, their fighting styles have switched, with Kane throwing a flurry of punches and kicks, and Bruce using less, but more focused attacks, exploiting mistakes in his fighting. The angrier Kane got, the sloppier his fighting became, and Bruce was able to exploit this, mocking him and aggravating him with every missed hit and deflection. Finally, as they were trading blow for blow, Bruce kicks him in the knee and uses his gauntlet to uppercut Kane, knocking him to the ground. Bruce then runs over to Alfred, making sure that he's okay, when they hear gunfire. Alfred tells Bruce to get his suit and that he'll grab his shotgun and head downstairs. Bruce then goes to the library, pulling one of the books down that activated the wall switch, flipping it around to reveal an elevator that led down to the Batcave. The firefight in the main hall was getting intense, with officers both stunned and dead on the ground. Gordon and Montoya were continuing to hold down the line, with Bullock and others taking the wounded out of the manor and calling for emergency help. The fire was beginning to engulf the manor, and Loeb and his corrupt police were beginning to gain a foothold against Gordon and Montoya's assault. Suddenly, the glass window above them shatters as Batman glides down in the middle of them, taking some of the officers down who were shooting at Gordon and Montoya. Batman instructs Gordon and his team to get out of the manor, and that he'll deal with the corrupt police. Gordon answers that he'll get his team out, but that he is going to help him stop Loeb. Gordon begins escorting his team out of the burning manor as Batman is taking out each of the corrupt officers, including Brandon. As he is caught up fighting, Gordon attempts to get back into the manor, but is held up by Loeb, who is holding his pistol up to Gordon's head. Gordon asks Loeb how he fell so far from being a respectable officer and commissioner to just another hired thug to do a crime lord's bidding. Loeb replies back that Gotham isn't like anywhere else, and he's had to learn that the hard way. There is no righteous battle between the police and crime in this city. There is only paying into the most powerful person, or getting wiped out. Plain and simple. Gordon shoots back, saying that Gotham and its inhabitants deserve more than the GCPD have been giving them for years now. They need to feel like they are truly safe, but with men like you in power, there can be no true safety. You do what you're told, not what's right, and that's the difference between the two of them. Loeb replies that Gordon is so naive, and that Gotham will eat idealists like him alive. Just wait and see. With the gun still pointed on Gordon, Jim puts his gun in his holster, telling Loeb to do the right thing. What a real police officer and servant of the people of Gotham City would do. Loeb's hands start to shake as Bullock and Montoya come up behind him, telling the commissioner to put his gun down before anyone else has to die. Loeb's hand is shaking even more violently as he closes his eyes and finally lowers his gun, eventually dropping it to the ground. Montoya begins to arrest Loeb while Gordon tells him that he is under arrest for aiding the criminal Roman Sionis, aka Black Mask. Loeb is then put in the back of a SWAT truck next to an unconscious Brandon and a few other corrupt officers. Back in the manor, Batman is fending off the last of the thugs when he is shot in the leg by Black Mask. Sionis yells that tonight is the end of the Batman, but is suddenly stopped in his tracks when Alfred shoots at the base of a flaming pillar, which lands on Black Mask's head, engulfing it in flames. After taking down the last of the thugs, Alfred helps Batman out of the manor and then takes a fire extinguisher to Sionis' head before dragging him out of the building too. After all of the thugs and corrupt officers have been taken care of, Gordon goes to the back of Wayne Manor, where Batman is leaning up against a pillar with his leg bleeding. Gordon tells Batman that the officer in him is wanting to arrest him, but that the father and husband in him thanks Batman for saving his life, along with the lives of many officers and their families. Batman replies that he does what he does for the betterment of Gotham City, not as a show, because in the end, this is his city as well as Gordon's. Gordon replies that he could not have stopped Loeb and Sionis without him, and he thanks him for it. Batman nods his head, saying that he looks forward to working with him again. Gordon looks at Batman's symbol, saying that that symbol stands for Gotham's safety, as well as fear for the criminals that inhabit it. Batman shakes Gordon's hand and hops into the Batmobile, driving away from the wreckage while fire trucks and police vehicles zoom past it. The following morning, Bruce hears on the radio that the dangerous crime lord Roman Sionis, aka Black Mask, was apprehended last night by the brave men and women of the GCPD. Well, the ones that weren't under his payroll, that is. Those under his payroll included Police Commissioner Jillian Loeb. Also apprehended was the lethal assassin David Kane. It seems that this was all an attempt on the billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne's life, and while he is alive, there is no definite statement from him pertaining to the events of the night. Gotham City can sleep safer, knowing that these threats are off the streets and being sent to the newly reopened Arkham Asylum. Alfred pulls into Gotham Cemetery, telling Bruce that they have arrived. Bruce thanks Alfred and tells him that he will only be out for a little bit. Bruce closes the car door, walking past the Sionis tombstone with red tape surrounding the crypt, and up to Thomas and Martha Wayne's tombstone. Holding a rose in his hand, Bruce sets it down, telling his parents that he's trying his best to preserve the legacy that they set for him. He's trying to be the best man he possibly can, and is fighting every day to keep the city that his parents loved safe. Thankfully, Alfred has been a wonderful father figure for him, and his only wish was that they could be here with him now. As Bruce is talking to his parents' grave, a woman walks up to him, saying that she heard him talking to someone. Bruce, trying to hide the fact that he was talking to his parents, said that he was just thinking out loud. The woman laughs, telling him that it's okay, and that she came here to talk to her mother's grave as well. Bruce looks down at his parents' grave, and she remarks that it's a real shame what happened to his parents. Bruce thanks her, telling her that he is sorry for the loss of her mother. She thanks him back, and he asks what her name is, as she clearly already knows who he is. She laughs, telling him that her name is Andrea Beaumont. And that's the end of my story. Thank you so much for watching my 2-part series. I hope that you all really enjoyed it. I was super disappointed in Arkham Origins' story, and I hope for those of you that were disappointed by it as well, found my story to at the least be entertaining. So let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more content like this, then subscribe to the channel. Thanks again everyone, and this is the Rewriter, writing out.